Daniel 9:27. But before I go to the book of Daniel, I'd like to read to you from Psalm 105. We're looking for the word covenant here. Verse 7, He is the Lord our God. His judgments are in all the earth. He remembers his covenant forever, the word which he commanded for 1,000 generations, the covenant which he made with Abraham and his oath to Isaac, and confirmed it to Jacob for a statute, to Israel as an everlasting covenant. To confirm a covenant means to make it even greater, passing it on, making it greater and greater as time goes on. And what's interesting is we find the same words in the New Testament in Luke 1. Mary is praying here in verse 54. He has helped his servant Israel and remembered his mercy as he spoke to our fathers, to Abraham and to his seed forever. His mercy is totally connected to the word covenant. They're inseparable. His mercy extends forever. His covenant is confirmed forever. And Zechariah, the father of John the Baptist, speaks here in a prayer in the same chapter, verse 72, to perform the mercy promised to our fathers and to remember his holy covenant, the oath which he swore to our father Abraham, to grant us that we, being delivered from the hand of our enemies, might serve him without fear, in holiness and righteousness before him all the days of our lives. Holiness and righteousness is what's required. Interesting. So we go to the book of Daniel, and Daniel 9:27 has been taught very strongly that it's a treaty made with present-day people, a peace treaty. Chapter 9, verse 27, I'll just read the first part. Then he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, 7 years. And this whole chapter 9 of Daniel is talking about what? Israel sinned before God. It's Daniel's prayer, actually. Israel sinned before God, and how God has confirmed his word before them. Let me read here from 9:9. To the Lord our God belong mercy and forgiveness, Daniel's prayer. Though we have rebelled against him, we have not obeyed his voice. Yes, all Israel has transgressed your law and has departed so as not to obey your voice. Therefore, the curse of the oath written in the law of Moses, the servant of God, have been poured out upon us. So what's this curse that's been poured out upon Israel? We're going to see it's about losing the temple again in 70 AD. Verse 12, and he has confirmed his words, which he spoke against us. Disaster, verse 13, disaster has come upon us, yet we have not made our prayer before the Lord our God, that we might turn from our iniquities and understand the truth. Therefore the Lord has kept the disaster in his mind. See, when we get out from under the umbrella of the Almighty, and we let the rain hit us, we get in trouble that way. But if we stay underneath that umbrella, and I'm talking about Israel too here, especially Israel, because they're the ones the covenant is made with, they're okay. God will confirm his word. He will stand for them. He will do right by them. But if it, as it says, even when they were in trials, they didn't turn back to him. In trials, it's a good time to turn back to the Lord. Sometimes we walk out from underneath the umbrella and the enemies of God come forth. And what happened here? He's being told by Gabriel. Gabriel came to him swiftly and told him, "O son of man, Daniel," he said, "O Daniel, I now come forth to give you skill to understand." Well, what does Daniel need to understand? What's coming in the future. And what came in the future, which it's talking about here in the 70 weeks of Daniel, is the siege of Jerusalem that happened in 66 AD and completed at 73 AD. So the Lord, as he confirms his covenant in verse 27, is saying, I will confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week he shall bring an end of sacrifice and offering. In the year 69 AD, plus a couple months, once again, the temple was sacked. The city was taken. The sacrifices and offering ended, meaning no more worship in the temple of God. And the temple fell in 70 AD, and the siege was completed in 73 AD. So I'm going to go on with that in a minute. But remember, well, you may not remember, but the Lord was crucified in 30 AD. And here it says in this chapter here, no one understand this, says verse 25. To restore and rebuild the temple until the Messiah, the Prince, comes will be 490 years. And then it goes on to say, this when the streets are rebuilt, when the city is back functioning. And then it says in verse 26, the Messiah shall be cut off, but not for himself. We know what cut off means, don't we? In 30 AD, he died. That means cut off. Cut off. Generations. It's the end, the finish. But it wasn't the finish, was it? Hallelujah. He came back up out of the grave, didn't he? And then it says, and from that time until the city and the sanctuary are destroyed, the people and the prince to come will destroy the city. Well, Titus's armies came in and sacked the city. It was destroyed again. The year, like I said, in year 69 and a few months, the sacrifices and offerings ceased. The temple was polluted. The people took a run and were scattered out. And so the wicked people that came against God were on the side of the Romans, where Roman armies came in and destroyed the temple once again. The Damascus document tells us that it was 40 years from the time of the Messiah, the righteous one, until the temple would be destroyed. And that's exactly what happened in the timeline. And then it goes on to say, and I'll read 27 fully, then he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. Remember what I said about confirming the covenant meant? Reestablishing it, making it greater. So God is saying here, through the words of Gabriel, the angel, to Daniel, that once again I must confirm the covenant because you have strayed from me. You lost the temple in Babylon, and now I'm telling you it's coming to happen again. And it did happen exactly. And he says, but in the middle of the week, he shall bring an end to sacrifice and offering. 69 and a half AD. Once again, the sacrifices ended. And this is fascinating here. On the wing of abomination shall be one who makes desolate. Who makes things desolate? And what is the wing of abominations? The temple rooftop had an extended roof. It's called a wing up there. And this is the place where Satan brought Jesus when he was tempting him. Remember, he went into the wilderness for 40 years and he was tempted up there. And Satan brought him to the pinnacle of the temple. And it's now called, it was called back in Daniel's day, on the wing where abomination occurred. Worship me, God, and worship me, Jesus. Oh. And on that wing, that same temple that was destroyed in 70 AD, as it says here, even until the consummation which is determined is poured out on the desolate. In other words, when a complete end was made of the people and the city and the temple. These events happened. I'm zipping over to the chapter 12 of Daniel. It's very interesting. The very last, it's a very difficult passage. In Daniel 11 it says, and from the time that the daily sacrifices are taken away, that's what we just read, And the abomination of the desolation is set up. Remember, there'll be an image set up. And was set up. Yeah. There was an image set up. 70 AD when that temple fell. Before that. Will be 3.5 years. It says 1,290 days. And in the middle of that week, that's exactly what happened. And then it goes on to say, blessed is he who waits and comes to the 1,335 days. Well, what's that? It's been a conundrum for us. We've not understood it well. But what it was the finale, the finish of the city and the land of Israel and the temple completely destroyed, happened in 73 AD. So that he's saying here, blessed is he who waits till the end. Well, what are you waiting for? Who doesn't give up on God. Who stands in righteousness and holiness before God, like I read earlier. Those Jews who stood with God, not against him. And during that time. Yeah. And by the way, there was a lot of them. There were a lot of Christians. The story goes, I have no background to where it came from, but it said 100,000 Jewish Christians, Jewish believers, Messianic believers in Yeshua, fled the city and got out and escaped this disaster. They said, wait, and comes to the end of those days, those terrible desolation completed. So those events all happen, but everyone's expecting these events to happen. So what am I going to say here now? Yes, they did happen. Daniel's book was fulfilled, but there's some places in here that reminds me and tells me we're going to have it again. And I'm going to go and show you in 2 Thessalonians 2. Let no one deceive you by any means, for that day, this is future, will not come until the falling away comes first, and the man of sin is revealed, the son of perdition. So this tells me there's another man of sin. It's not Titus who overthrew the city in 70 AD. This is telling us of something in the future, from Paul's future beyond. You know what? Son of perdition is a title for Judas Iscariot. Another Judas Iscariot's coming on the scene in the future. And when that man is revealed, he's going to, it says in 8, and then the lawless one, another title for him, will be revealed, whom the Lord will consume with the breath of his mouth and destroy with the brightness of his coming. So see, this character has to come right before Messiah returns to earth. He's mentioned also in Revelation 13, and there he is called the Beast. And in Daniel 9, there's a really good description of him. I'm not going to be able to read it all to you for time's sake, but go to Daniel 11 and read that some of the things that this person might be. And it's interesting, in verse 11:32 it says, those who do wickedly against the covenant, he shall corrupt with flattery. But the people who know their God shall be strong and carry out great exploits. When this future Judas comes on the scene, there'll be many Jews that stand with God. And in the Roman occupation and destruction of the temple, I just said there were 100,000 that fled the city, and they must have done great exploits. So see, this event has happened, but it's going to be mirrored again in the future. Daniel 9:27, confirming the covenant. It's not a treaty from man to man. It's a covenant between God and Israel. When God confirms his covenant, troubles come. When the people hold firm to the covenant, God is faithful. And even when the trouble comes, God shows forth his mercy and grace unto Israel. Daniel 9:27, confirming the covenant with the house of Israel, letting them know ahead of time the temple would fall again in 70 AD. letting them know again. He will confirm the covenant again with the tribulation temple and our future. And he will say, this temple too will fall. Israel comes out from underneath the umbrella.